Welcome to Live at the Loft. I'm Kelly Guest.
I'm Teri Knight, and this is Kathryn Harwig. Hi. Kathryn is a one-time probation officer,
Yes.
an attorney, an author, a speaker, and an intuitive master.
Yes.
There's also so much more about you. I was roaming around on Harwig.com, and if you want to learn a lot about Kathryn, Harwig.com, and we'll have that information too on our website. But Kathryn, I guess the first thing is to give us a little bit of a download on what is an intuitive master.
Because I started reading and you're I'm like, she's a psychic lawyer. Kathryn is also an attorney, which is fascinating.
Yeah. And actually, intuitive master is really the word that I coined. Because I've been intuitive, I've been psychic, which I consider, by the way, to be the same thing. Some people make a differentiation between those, I don't really. Intuitive was a word that worked better with my clientele when I was practicing law, particularly. And I don't practice anymore, so I don't say that. I'm still a lawyer, but I don't do that anymore. I keep practicing. But the reason I call it a master is that my whole goal with working with people is to let intuitive become something that they can master themselves. That it becomes a tool that we use rather than, I think a lot of people think of it as a God-given gift or something that just people have, or either they have it or they don't have it. Mm-hmm. And I don't believe that's true. So I actually teach something called the Intuitive Mastery Program where people can learn how to master their own intuition.
Do you teach that to corporations, to businesses, or to
individuals? Will listen. Yes, primarily individuals, although I have worked with just a really lot of corporations, nonprofits. Because of my training as a probation officer and an attorney, I've worked with a lot of police departments, a lot of correctional officers, that kind of stuff.
Okay, but on that note, how, because a city budget, if you will, a government entity, that's what those things really are. How do they get that through the bureaucratic process to get the rubber stamp to pay for your services? Because that's really unusual. I mean, I love it, but it's different.
It is very different, and I think they may have done a little bit of creative things. A lot of the corporations do it as a motivational sort of a piece, and that's how they get around it. But the police officers and so forth were really, it's another form of training the brain. And so I wasn't training them to be, what do I want to say, predicting things or that kind of stuff. We were just training them to be alert, to pay attention to their gut instinct. And I think it helps that I've got a doctorate of law and a degree in psychology and a whole bunch of other degrees that kind of can be played into that.
Okay, and just speaking of all of the schooling that you have, how does that work with an intuitive side? What was that like? I mean, were tests really easy for you or what? I mean,
well, actually, yes. I mean, the good news about being intuitive is it makes life better. So, not just, it sounds a little arrogant, but yes, the more that I use my intuition, the better that things kind of flow for me. But I think for everybody, if you use both sides of your brain, the logical, practical, which, law school certainly trains you to use that logical part of my brain, or trains me. And then to use the intuitive piece is just a really potent mixture.
How do you balance that?
yeah.
That's an interesting question. I don't think it's a difficult balance, but I've done it a long time. Yeah. So I know that for people who are starting out, the balance is that they don't trust themselves and they don't believe in it and they second guess it and they get intuitive information and don't act on it. And then so that's kind of the balancing piece is learning to trust yourself. Mm-hmm. It also comes with age.
Sure.
Yeah.
Lots of things come with age, and some good, not all. Well, in this opening portion, let's back up just a little bit. I mean, we've hit some of the myriad degrees and incarnations of career that you've had here, but tell us where you came from and when you first noticed this.
I probably noticed it, but I didn't have a word for it. But I remember noticing, I would say maybe age 3 years old. My first inclination, I read poems. I still read poems. I read poems less because I can't see as well anymore. But nonetheless, I read poems. But when I was a little girl and it was was totally spontaneous. So I've had people say, well, you think it's past life? I don't know. All I know is that I would walk up to people and hold their hand and look at it and tell them things about themselves. And I remember doing that when I was really, really small. So I was always a little peculiar as a kid. I mean, that wasn't a normal sort of thing for people to do.
How accepted was that?
Not so. My family was very conservative. I lived in Hinckley, Hinckley, Minnesota, and pre-casino, pre-35W Hinckley, a long time ago. And no, it wasn't something that they expected or desired. But for a while, it was a joke, you know, kind of cute. When I was a little kid, I dressed up as a gypsy a lot. And then it wasn't so funny. And I think it's really one of the reasons I went to school. When I went to college, I got a degree in psychology, my first degree, and I really wanted to figure out what was going on with me that wasn't going on with other people.
Sure.
Why, you know, what was wrong with me? And,
Yeah.
You know, and so I spent a lot of my life, my adult life, trying to be a normal person. I think the main motivator when I went back for going to law school was that I first I looked at the most powerful people that I worked at the probation officer. Most powerful people in the courthouse were judges and lawyers. So of course that made sense to me that I wanted to do that. But also I think looking back, I thought, well, these are normal people. You know, as normal as you, no, I know differently. No, I know differently. But at the time I thought, okay, these are, if you're going to be a kook, you might as well be an educated kook, so,
I like it.
Yeah, exactly. It works for me.
So I'm guessing, just backtracking a little bit to your family, and when your gift and your differentiation sprouted up, I would think that they almost had to accept it because a 3-year-old doesn't have the ability to make this up. It was organic. So I bet you they took it a little more seriously.
It was really a love-hate kind of a thing. My mother was fascinated with it. I truly believe that my mother was quite gifted intuitively, and I know my sister is. I think my older sister was as well. Couldn't claim it. But so it was a love-hate thing because in one sense they were very, very fundamentalist Christian, and we were all sure that this wasn't evil. And then in the other sense, she could see that it worked. So it was interesting.
Absolutely. Well, Henry, the Great Dane, is telling us, I think, that we'll go ahead and wrap our intro segment here with Kathryn Harwig. Yes, darling. And
He's a good timekeeper.
He is. He knows how cranky I get when I have to edit too much.
There you go.
We'll be back here live at the Loft with Kathryn Harwig.